Hi there, it's Kleon here. Stealing, that's what we're talking about today. Theft, nicking. The reason I wanted to talk about this was I've just been reading a book which came yesterday. It's a very small book, it's as big as my head there, and it's called Steal Like an Artist, and it's by a guy called Kleon. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if not, but I am giving him a free mention of his book, so you can't complain that much. It's worth getting hold of. It's quite interesting. It's very nicely put together. He's an artist, he's a designer, he's a writer, bit of a Renaissance man really. And I came across him through a book of poetry which he'd put together in a quite weird way, and it's partly that idea, how he put that poetry together, that I wanted to discuss with you today about this idea of stealing. And basically this book of poetry that Kleon put together was where he'd go into an article in a newspaper or magazine, and he'd read through the article, find any words that he thought were interesting, and he'd highlight them. Then the remainder of the words in the piece he would scribble out and black out basically, and between that, I think there's an example of it in this book actually. Yeah, you can just see here. You see just picking out words there, and the words that he picked out of the blankness would form his poetry. It was quite good. It was quite interesting. As soon as I started looking at it, I realised he was kind of going for a kind of almost cut and paste technique, which he openly admits to. I did some further investigation into him, and he did an interesting talk at a TED conference about that idea, and as I thought, he'd kind of taken that idea from the kind of 1960s cut and paste kind of thing that was going on in San Francisco with people like William Burroughs and that kind of really experimental literature. What was interesting though, and why what I thought I'd share with you today, is Kleon carried on looking, and he thought, well, if I stole this idea, where did William Burroughs get it from? Surely there's no new ideas. And he found out that he'd taken it from Burroughs, who'd taken it from a guy called Tristan Tzara, who was operating in kind of 1920s Paris. He was linked with the Surrealist movement, although from my own reading I've read quite a lot about 1920s in Paris, and the Surrealists didn't actually like Tzara. They were having all sorts of fights and trying to outdo each other. But Tzara was doing this kind of random cutting and pasting and just saying disassociated words as poetry. He got it from someone else, who got it from someone else, who got it from someone else, and it goes on and on. I had a perfect example of this in my own life when, with music. Now I play in a band, and I've played in a band for a long time in all different bands, and when we were younger we were very influenced by a band called Don Caballero. It's kind of, they're called math rock, which is basically rock music that's played in strange timings. The best example is if you think of the song Take 5 by Dave Brubeck, who's a jazz pianist who you've probably heard at some point. That's in 5-time, and basically Don Caballero just took that to a complete extreme and played rock music in strange timings. We really liked that idea. We played our music in strange timings, very similar to Don Caballero. Then a friend of mine listened to our band and said, "Oh, you must be very influenced by King Crimson." Now, I'd never heard of King Crimson. I didn't know who they were, but I went and found out about them. And if you know King Crimson, you'll be thinking, how could I not know? But I listened to them, listened to an album called Red. They're basically a prog rock band from the 70s, or they're still going today, I think. And it's by a guy called Robert Fripp. He's the main guy behind King Crimson. And I listened to this album Red, and it was like listening to Don Caballero. I couldn't believe it. I was like, there's an album from the 70s here who sound exactly like the album I'm listening to from the 90s, who sound in turn like my own band. It's incredible really, and you can just keep going back and back and back, and people are just stealing ideas from each other and developing them. And that's the key thought that I'd like to steal from Kleon, steal from everybody who's ever stole this idea and add to it slightly and put my own angle on it. Although ironically, it's not my own angle, it's from my friend Tom, and it comes back to that music, and he's a fiend for stealing riffs from other bands, and I'll say, I've heard that riff, that's from X or Y or whoever, and he openly admits, he goes, yes, but what we're doing is borrowing it and improving it. And I love the idea. I think it's an excellent addition to this idea that you steal like an artist, that you steal from different people. What you don't do, you don't just steal in the sense that you take from someone. If you steal £10 from someone, you're taking something without adding anything to it, without replacing it, without making that £10 better. You're just nicking it, plain and simple. But if you steal from someone, if you steal an idea from someone, and if you add your own thoughts to that idea, if you develop that idea, if you take it to another step that comes about just because of what you think and what you believe, then you really are just borrowing it and improving it. And I like to look at it like that. Really, there is no shame in stealing ideas, in stealing things that you like and enjoy. I always remember Bill Bonner, the owner of Agora, at one of the talks that I went to with him in his chateau in France. I think he started the talk by saying that great writers steal. Some of the best sales promotions that I've written, some of the best emails that I've written, some of the best business ideas that I've come up with have been stolen from someone else, and then I've just developed them with my own thoughts. There's no shame in it. It's what happens. It's what you should do. In Kleon's book here, there's millions of examples, from David Bowie to T.S. Eliot, saying and explaining that people steal from other people. That is what culture is, essentially. But it's not just stealing, as I say, it's borrowing and improving. I don't know if you've ever read a book called Sophie's World, which is all about philosophy, and it follows the character Sophie as she starts getting letters from someone who explains the development of philosophy since the Greeks. And it's a very revealing book. It's a very useful book in the sense of it teaches you a lot about philosophy and the different types of philosophy that have developed over the years. But what I found really revealing was that it shows you in quite a nice chronological order. And what it shows is that since the start of the Greeks, there was a few kind of people around doing philosophy at that time when they invented it, and then but kind of Plato and Socrates really kind of started philosophy. That's what we always go back to. But ever since then, all the way through time, through the Middle Ages, through the Renaissance, through modern philosophy now, all that people essentially do when it comes to philosophy is take the idea that was there before, they look at it, they look at what's good about it, they look at what's bad about it, and they look at how they can improve it. They do their improvements to it and present that idea. Next person comes along, they look at that idea, they see what's good about it, they see what they think is wrong about it, and they add their own thoughts to it, and they present their idea. And that has been happening since dot. That is what happens. It's what happens in philosophy. In that example, it's what happens in music. It's what happens in literature. It's what happens in culture. It is what happens in business. It happens in everything. You take the idea, you add your own thoughts to it, and then you present that idea. That's what I want to share with you today. I just think it's a very, I don't know, I find it a calming idea. I don't think it's a bad thing. People think that it sounds like a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing that that's what happens in culture, and there's no shame in it. If you see something you like, try it, copy it, but add something to it and see what you can do to make it better. If you do that, I think you'll get somewhere really good. So have a look at the Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon there. It's worth picking up. Pick up Sophie's World as well. If you see that, it's in all bookshop. I think it's one of the best-selling books around. It's very interesting if you're into philosophy. And think about things that you like, good ideas that you've seen, and how you could borrow and improve them.